a bank manager, tried to humiliate a Black Woman Federal Investigator. 43 minutes later, his career and his bank collapsed. "Ma'am, empty your pockets and step away from my desk." The words cracked through Midwest Trust Bank like a whip. Branch manager Gerald Whitman's chair screeched against the marble floor as he stood, fingers stabbing the air at the black woman sitting calmly across from him. The lobby froze mid-breath. She wore worn-out jeans and a plain hoodie. No jewelry, no makeup. Gerald's eyes flicked over her with the same disdain one reserves for shoplifters. Then, with a flourish, he yanked out a bottle of hand sanitizer, pumping it into his palms as if her very presence was contamination. "People like you don't stroll into banks like this asking for millions," he spat, his voice carrying across the lobby. "And remember, every word you say is being recorded by security. So don't try anything stupid." He rubbed the sanitizer into his hands slowly, almost theatrically, eyes locked on hers, as if daring her to react. But Dr. Amelia Richardson didn't flinch. Have you ever watched someone humiliated in public, only to realize, too late, that they were the most powerful person in the room? The digital clock above the tellers blinked. 2:47 p.m. closing time, 73 minutes. Gerald had been enjoying a perfect day, 23 years running this branch, and he prided himself on spotting trouble the second it crossed his threshold. And this woman, walking in with no appointment, clutching a manila folder like treasure, he could smell desperation before she even sat down. "Let me guess," Gerald said, loud enough for every customer to hear. "This is about that business loan application you submitted online. $2.3 million. He gave an exaggerated chuckle. "Do you even understand what kind of collateral that requires?" On the desk, Amelia's phone buzzed. Caller ID, U.S. Treasury Deputy Director Chun. Without so much as glancing down, she declined the call, her eyes never leaving Gerald. "Sir, perhaps we could discuss this privately," she said evenly. "Oh, I think transparency is good for everyone," Gerald replied with smug delight, his voice booming across the marble lobby. From the corner, 73-year-old Mrs. Patterson shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Near the ATM, 17-year-old Zoe Chun tilted her phone slightly, streaming live to her 200 followers. Viewers, 347. Comments, blowing up. Is this really happening? Somebody call the news. Behind the bulletproof glass, teller Maria Gonzalez felt her stomach tighten. She had worked here 18 months, sending money home to El Salvador every week. Speaking up meant risking her job. Staying silent meant watching injustice play out 3 feet away. Gerald snatched the application from Amelia's folder and flipped it open like it was a bad joke. Community Development Fund? His eyebrows shot up with mocking disbelief. Investing in minority-owned businesses? That's noble. But this is a bank. We deal in reality, not charity fantasies. Security guard David Torres, stationed near the entrance, couldn't shake an odd feeling. The woman didn't look rattled, not even slightly. She sat poised, calm, almost regal. The kind of composure he'd seen only in high-ranking officials who were used to commanding rooms full of people. Meanwhile, Amelia's leather portfolio rested quietly on her lap, zipper slightly open. Inside, just visible, the unmistakable gleam of an American Express Centurion card. The mythical black card reserved for those who spent $250,000 a year. The livestream viewer count hit 1,200 as Zoe zoomed in closer on Gerald's face. "Ma'am, I'm trying to save you from embarrassing yourself," Gerald continued, his hands sweeping around the marble columns of the lobby. "Do you know how many years of financial backing, records, and institutional connections it takes to secure this kind of loan? This isn't a place where people just stroll in off the street with big dreams." "Excuse me," Mrs. Patterson's voice rang out at last. "Is this really necessary? Couldn't you handle her application privately?" Gerald turned toward her, smiling the patronizing smile of a man certain of his authority. "Mrs. Patterson, I understand your concern, but my job is to protect legitimate customers from potential fraud situations." The word fraud hung in the air like a spark in a gas leak. Across the lobby, more customers quietly reached for their phones. Livestream count, 2,100. Amelia's phone buzzed again. Caller ID, FBI, Special Agent Williams. Declined. Again, without breaking eye contact. "Sir," she said, her voice steady as stone. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding about my qualifications." "Oh, I understand perfectly," Gerald said, leaning closer. "You filled out some online form. Probably heard about government programs that force banks to give money to people who can't pay it back, and figured you'd try your luck." He stood, letting his 6 feet 2 inches frame tower over her seated position. "Here's the thing. We don't just take someone's word for it. We verify. We check records. We make sure people aren't showing up with printouts they whipped up on their laptops." Security guard Torres took one step forward. This was getting dangerous. He had been in security for 15 years, and situations like this had a way of spiraling out of control. Yet Amelia sat there, serene, like someone waiting for a delayed flight, mildly inconvenienced, but in no real hurry. "I think we need to involve the authorities," Gerald announced, making sure everyone heard. "We've had multiple incidents recently involving fake documents with large loan requests. Livestream count, 3,847. Call the cops on him. This is 2024, not 19. Y'all," Zoe whispered into her phone. "This manager is literally calling the police on a woman for applying for a loan." Maria Gonzalez's heart was pounding against her ribs. Still, Amelia showed no reaction. No fear, no anger, no begging. Just a calm patience that felt dangerous. Gerald snatched his desk phone, glaring down at her. "Sir," Amelia asked, her voice soft but cutting through the entire lobby. "Are you sure that's your best option?" For just a second, his hand froze over the receiver. For just a second, he doubted himself. Then arrogance returned. "Ma'am, I've been doing this for 23 years. I know exactly what I'm dealing with." He dialed 911. The digital clock above the teller window glowed 3:15 p.m. Branch closing in 45 minutes. And with one call, Gerald Whitman had just triggered a storm that would change everything. "You've been coordinating with federal investigators this whole time?" Gerald's voice cracked as the reality hit. Dr. Richardson's tone stayed calm, but carried the weight of authority. "Special Agent Williams has monitored this compliance review from day one. When you dialed 911, federal protocol required him to respond. He's 3 minutes out." Gerald collapsed into his chair, his stomach twisting. He had just summoned the FBI to arrest a federal agent who was already building a case against his bank. David Torres stepped forward, his expression steady. "Ma'am, I owe you an apology. I knew I'd seen you somewhere, but couldn't place it. I should have realized." "Mr. Torres," Richardson said, glancing at her notes, "former Army military police. 12 years. Yes, ma'am. Your conduct today has been professional. Unlike others here, you didn't join in discriminatory behavior." The words landed like steel. Gerald and Kevin shifted uneasily. Dr. Richardson raised her voice to address the entire lobby. "Everyone in this branch needs to understand something. What you just saw wasn't bad customer service. It was a violation of federal banking law." She began ticking off points on her fingers. Discriminatory lending. Violation of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. Filing false police reports against a federal investigator. Multiple criminal civil rights violations under Title 8 of the Civil Rights Act. The front door chimed. A tall black man in a dark suit strode in, his posture unmistakable, federal law enforcement. His eyes swept the room, noting the phone's recording, the uniformed officers, the stunned customers. He stopped in front of Dr. Richardson and snapped a sharp salute. "Dr. Richardson, Special Agent Marcus Williams, Financial Crimes Division. My apologies for the delay." More than 22,000 people watching the live stream saw a federal agent salute the woman Gerald had tried to humiliate. In that instant, Gerald's career was effectively over. Agent Williams turned to the officers. "Thank you for responding, but this is now a federal matter. Dr. Richardson has full jurisdiction." His gaze locked on Gerald. "Are you the manager who called the FBI claiming Dr. Richardson was committing fraud?" Gerald's mouth went dry. Filing a false report against a federal investigator meant obstruction of justice. Title 18, Section 1505. A federal felony, punishable by up to 5 years in prison. The live chat exploded with fire emojis and shocked reactions. Zoe Chin whispered into her phone, "Y'all, this guy really might get arrested by the FBI." Dr. Richardson raised a hand. "Agent Williams, Mr. Whitman didn't know I was federal, but his actions are fully documented." She turned to Gerald, meeting his eyes for the first time since revealing her badge. "Mr. Whitman, you told me, someone with verified federal credentials and over $4 million in liquid assets, that I should be at a check-cashing store. You called the police when I asked for my application to be reviewed." Gerald's lips moved, but no sound came. "Thousands have witnessed your actions today, all of it recorded with federal-grade equipment. This evidence will be submitted to the Federal Reserve Board, the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, and the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency." The lobby was silent until Mrs. Patterson spoke. "Dr. Richardson, what happens to the customers who were denied loans before this?" "Excellent question," Richardson replied. "The Federal Reserve will require this bank to review every loan rejection from the past 24 months. Those who were wrongly denied will receive priority reconsideration and compensation for damages." Agent Williams glanced at his phone. "Dr. Richardson, the live stream was just shared by Congressman Davis and Senator Washington. They're requesting immediate congressional briefings on banking discrimination." Gerald's pulse pounded in his ears. Congressional attention meant national media coverage, federal hearings, and pressure that could jeopardize the bank's federal charter. Just then, Gerald's phone, still lying on the desk, crackled to life. "Dr. Richardson, this is President Chun. I'm en route by helicopter. ETA 7 minutes. Please, don't make any final decisions until I arrive." Richardson picked up the phone. "President Chun, emergency interventions won't change the evidence. But I'm open to discussing compliance remediation." "Thank you." Then Chin's voice sharpened. "Gerald, you're suspended immediately. Security will escort you out." Gerald finally found words. "Sir, I was protecting the bank's interests. You just cost this institution millions in fines and created a national scandal. You're terminated. Effective now. Kevin, suspended pending investigation. Maria Gonzalez, promoted to interim branch manager." The line went dead. More than 22,000 viewers had just watched a man's career implode in real time because he couldn't see past the color of a customer's skin. Outside, at 3:52 p.m., the steady thump of rotor blades grew louder. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, customers saw a sleek corporate helicopter descending onto the parking lot, scattering leaves and drawing cameras from the gathering news crews. Bank President Robert Chin stepped out in a $3,000 suit, flanked by 2 attorneys and Chief Legal Counsel Sarah Kim. His normally composed expression showed cracks of panic as he strode toward the entrance, phone pressed to his ear. "Stock price is down 11% in the last hour," he muttered. "How many outlets have this already?" The live stream had surged past 34,000 viewers. Hashtag Midwest Trust Racism was trending nationwide. Local news vans lined Commerce Street like a parade of accountability. Your second major task is to build a leadership team that truly reflects the diversity of this community. Dr. Richardson faced the gathered crowd. "Everyone here just witnessed how systemic discrimination can be confronted and defeated through law, evidence, and oversight," she said firmly. Zoe Chun, the young woman who had live-streamed the entire ordeal, lifted her phone and raised her hand. "Dr. Richardson, does this mean other banks will face the same kind of scrutiny?" "Ms. Chun, your recording today was invaluable," Richardson replied. "The Federal Reserve is initiating a nationwide audit of lending practices. Any institution showing similar patterns of complaints will get surprise compliance inspections." The message was unmistakable. This was bigger than one branch. It was part of a national reckoning. President Chin's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Directors, investors, crisis consultants, all demanding answers. The stock continued to slide as major news outlets ran the story nonstop. President Chun, Richardson continued. "Your willingness to cooperate will be noted in our report. But know this, oversight will remain in place without an end date." "I understand completely," Chun admitted. Agent Williams stepped closer. "Mr. Chun, one more issue. Gerald Whitman filed a false police report accusing Dr. Richardson of fraud. The FBI treats false reports against federal officers as serious offenses." Agent Williams, Chun responded quickly. "Mr. Whitman is fired and permanently barred from banking. We'll fully cooperate with any criminal probe." Dr. Richardson shut her portfolio with a decisive snap. "President Chun, you have 72 hours to complete Phase 1 of the compliance overhaul. Federal monitors arrive Monday." "We'll be ready," Chun replied, though his voice was tight. Richardson turned to the waiting customers, many still recording. "Thank you for your patience today. Your presence and testimony are critical in ensuring accountability." Mrs. Patterson, the elderly woman who had refused to stay silent earlier, asked, "Dr. Richardson, what can ordinary customers do to stop discrimination like this?" "Document everything," Richardson answered. "Record whenever it's safe. File formal complaints with regulators. Discrimination survives in secrecy. It dies under public scrutiny." Agent Williams began packing up his gear. "Dr. Richardson, should I submit the report?" "Yes," she said. "Send it within the hour, with every recording, statement, and witness account attached." She took one last sweeping look at the marble-floored lobby, at Maria Gonzalez studying new procedures, at David Torres standing tall knowing justice had prevailed, at the customers who had found their voices, and at the vacant desk where Gerald Whitman's career had collapsed. "Systemic change," she told them, "requires two things: individual courage and institutional accountability. Today, you brought the courage. Federal oversight will guarantee the accountability." Outside, the helicopter rotors roared back to life. President Chun was about to head back to corporate headquarters to begin what would become the most expensive compliance overhaul in the company history. But Dr. Amelia Richardson's mission here was finished. She had exposed discrimination, forced reforms, and proved once again that calm expertise dismantles loud prejudice. Gerald Whitman's attempt to humiliate a black woman in a hoodie had cost the bank millions and transformed how an entire community viewed power. 6 weeks later, the changes were impossible to miss. Maria Gonzalez stood behind the same marble counter where she once counted cash in silence. Now she wore a tailored manager's blazer, reviewing loan applications with confidence and authority. On Gerald's old desk, a new nameplate gleamed in bold letters: Maria Gonzalez, branch manager. "Mrs. Patterson, your grandson's small business loan has been approved," Maria announced warmly. 2.1% interest rate, exactly as we discussed. The older woman's eyes lit up. "Maria, you've completely transformed this place." And it was true. The transformation was everywhere. Digital screens above the lobby displayed live updates, diversity statistics, approval rates by demographic, customer satisfaction scores, compliance ratings, all refreshed hourly. The AI system Richardson required was installed across every department, scanning for patterns of bias and automatically alerting federal regulators within minutes of detection. David Torres had been promoted to Community Relations Coordinator. His former military discipline now channeled into rebuilding trust with customers who had long avoided the bank. Certificates from federal diversity programs lined his office walls, along with photos from community outreach events. "Mr. Williams, your loan application looks excellent," Torres told a young black entrepreneur across his desk. "Maria can process final approval in under 24 hours. From the $5.2 million Community Development Fund Richardson mandated, 43 minority-owned businesses had already received financing, generating 156 new jobs in nearby neighborhoods. The success stories filled local papers: the Honduran family opening a restaurant, the black teenager launching a tech startup, the elderly Vietnamese seamstress expanding her shop. The branch wasn't just meeting new standards, it was thriving under them. Customer satisfaction ratings soared by 340% after quarterly bias training became mandatory. The anonymous complaint portal, required by federal guidelines, ensured every concern was investigated within 2 days. And Gerald Whitman? His fate became a cautionary tale across the industry. Banned from banking, he'd ended up selling insurance door to door, making a third of his old salary. Local media occasionally revisited his downfall when discussing workplace discrimination. Kevin Walsh avoided prosecution by fully cooperating with compliance reforms, but his career stalled permanently. He now worked as a customer service clerk at a credit union, far from any management track. The ripple effects didn't stop at one bank. Richardson's live-streamed investigation triggered congressional hearings on banking discrimination. Senator Washington played the viral footage in committee, forcing regulators to audit 847 financial institutions. 12 other banks, hoping to avoid penalties, voluntarily implemented real-time monitoring systems identical to Richardson's model. The American Bankers Association even issued new industry-wide standards, prohibiting discriminatory language outright and requiring live bias awareness testing. Meanwhile, Zoe Chun, whose phone had captured the turning point, accepted a journalism internship with the Federal Reserve's Public Affairs Division. The very phone she used that day now sat in the Smithsonian Civil Rights exhibit. "This is proof," she told visitors on guided tours, "that one person refusing to accept discrimination can change entire industries." The shift was cultural as much as procedural. Employees who once whispered assumptions about certain customers were now openly recruiting minority-owned businesses. Loan officers celebrated diversity metrics alongside profit margins. Maria Gonzalez built her management team to mirror the community: a Somali assistant manager, a Latino loan officer, a Black customer service director. Their combined perspectives changed how decisions were made. Quarterly community audits, once feared, became community celebrations. Independent civil rights groups consistently ranked the branch among the top 5% of inclusive banks nationwide. Financially, the results silenced every skeptic. Minority business loans not only matched traditional performance, they had lower default rates and higher profit margins. President Chun, initially humiliated by the public fallout, began speaking at national conferences about diversity as a competitive advantage. Dr. Richardson's intervention saved our institution, he admitted in a Harvard Business School case study. "We were practicing discrimination that was morally wrong and financially foolish." The broader investigation found discriminatory patterns in 23% of audited banks, resulting in $847 million in fines and compliance costs. But for those that embraced inclusion, customer satisfaction and revenue both surged. Mrs. Patterson, now 74, became a community advocate, attending every quarterly audit and speaking at conferences about how customers could hold banks accountable. "That day showed me," she often said, "that ordinary people have extraordinary power when they refuse to accept injustice." Dr. Richardson proved that quiet courage defeats loud prejudice. International banking groups sent delegations from Canada, the UK, and Germany to study the branch's transformation. What they saw was not just compliance, but restored trust. For the first time in decades, customers who had avoided banks opened accounts without. Small business owners applied for loans without expecting rejection based on appearance. What had once been a symbol of exclusion had become a model for economic empowerment. 2 years later, Dr. Amelia Richardson had become a national figure. She was promoted to Director of Banking Compliance for the Federal Reserve, leading anti-discrimination enforcement across all 50 states. Her methodology, unannounced audits, full documentation, and public accountability became standard protocol for civil rights enforcement. Gerald Whitman's 43-minute meltdown had sparked the most sweeping banking reform since the Civil Rights Act. The Richardson Protocol now required real-time bias monitoring in 2,847 financial institutions nationwide. Forbes featured Richardson on its Most Powerful Women cover. But the image that resonated most was still Zoe Chun's video. A Black woman in a hoodie calmly dismantling institutional racism with credentials, facts, and composure. Maria Gonzalez now managed 7 branches, her career accelerated by measurable success in inclusive banking. The development fund she oversaw had helped create 412 minority-owned businesses and $23 million in local economic growth. "These are the stories that matter," Richardson said at a public lecture. Stories of quiet strength defeating loud prejudice. The video continued to inspire change. Congress cited it during debates on regulatory reform. Law schools studied it as a model for civil rights enforcement. MBA programs analyzed how inclusive lending was not just ethical, but profitable. But the most important legacy lived in neighborhoods where discrimination had once stifled opportunity. Families who'd been denied mortgages unjustly finally secured homes. Small business owners received fair access to capital. Economic growth flowed where prejudice had once blocked progress. Mrs. Patterson, now 76, served on the Federal Reserve's Community Advisory Board, helping shape policies she once thought were beyond reach. Dr. Richardson showed us that documentation defeats discrimination. She testified before Congress. When good people record bad behavior, systemic change becomes inevitable. The ripple effects went far beyond banking. Richardson's blueprint, careful documentation, federal authority, and public transparency, was now used in civil rights enforcement in housing, employment, and education. One woman's refusal to accept humiliation had reshaped how an entire industry and countless communities approached fairness and equity. Today, discrimination complaints in banking are down 67%, while minority business lending is up 89%. What began in that marble-floored branch became proof that justice isn't abstract. It's real, immediate, and achievable when courage meets documentation. Have you ever seen discrimination in banking, workplaces, or public spaces? Share your experience in the comments. Your voice could ignite the change someone else is waiting for. Record evidence when it's safe and add your story. These acts of courage inspire others to take action. Subscribe to Black Nation Strength for more real stories of quiet power defeating systemic prejudice. Like, comment, and share if you believe individual action can spark lasting change. Your story could be next. Your courage could transform lives.